The Old Testament fills up a large portion of our Bibles, and yet many Christians are confused about the story of the Old Testament. The Old Testament teaches us some very important truths about God, beginning with the fact that God created everything. We see this in the first verse of the Bible, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, the Bible also tells us that the crowning achievement of God's creation is humanity. Humans are the only people, the only things in all of the universe who are made in the image of God. The Old Testament also teaches us that humans were meant to enjoy a relationship with God, which is exactly what the first humans, Adam and Eve, had. But we find out very quickly that there was a problem. Sin wrecked God's creation. Specifically, sin wrecked humans' relationship with God. In the garden, God had told Adam and Eve not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And yet this is what happened in Genesis 3:6. Talking about Eve, she saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some of the fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it too. In this act of rebellion, Adam and Eve brought sin into the human race. And as we read in Genesis and throughout the Old Testament, sin had a devastating effect on humanity and creation. But from that very first moment when sin entered the world, God told us that he would also rescue us from our sins. God's rescue plan really takes shape in Genesis chapter 12. In Genesis 12, we find that God chose Israel to be his special people. Look at the first 3 verses. The Lord said to Abram, "Leave your native country, your relatives, and your father's family, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on earth will be blessed through you." God decided to make his special people Israel from the offspring of Abraham. Abraham and his offspring didn't do anything to deserve God's blessing, but he gave it to them because of his grace. And as God's special people, Israel was supposed to show the whole world who God was, what he was like, and how to worship him. And much of the Old Testament is the story of Israel, how it grew from one family to a large nation, and how it entered into their promised land. But there was a problem even within Israel. The problem was that the people still had sin in their lives. And ultimately what we find as we read the Old Testament is that God promised the Messiah to deal with human sin. The Messiah was God's rescuer. We read about the Messiah all over the Old Testament, but especially in places like Isaiah 53, verse 6. All of us like sheep have strayed away. We have left God's paths to follow our own. Yet the Lord laid on him the sins of us all. Finally, God would deal with our sin, and he would deal with our sin through his Messiah. The Messiah would save his people and would ultimately save the world. And as we read about in the Old Testament, the Messiah is the true, everlasting King of God's people in the whole universe. This promise of the Messiah gave God's people in the Old Testament a wonderful hope for the future. All of this, all that God would do, would lead to a new covenant. That is, a new promise that God would make to his people. We read about it in Ezekiel 36, 26 through 27. "And I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will take out your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. And I will put my spirit in you so that you will follow my decrees and be careful to obey my regulations." After experiencing the salvation that the Messiah would bring, God's people would get a new heart, and God's Spirit would live inside of them so that they could once and for all truly obey God and honor him, so that we could have the kind of relationship that he intended us to have with him in the garden way back in Genesis 1. And the good news, of course, is that Jesus is this Messiah. He has dealt with our sin, and he's enabled us to have this kind of relationship with God.